So I got my bachelor's in psychology from UC, and when my senior year, a classmate of mine said, hey, there's this organization in town, they're hiring for wraparound workers, which is essentially somebody that goes and supports kids that are either living in foster homes or struggling in schools as a one-on-one behavioral support. And so I started doing that work without really knowing what I was doing at all, to be honest. I graduated with my bachelor's. I knew how to write a report on how to help someone with mental health. I didn't actually know what I was doing in terms of clinical skills. So a lot of that I learned on the fly. But I remember I was working with an individual, and the individual had just a long history of people trying to help him. And through working with him, I went to school with him every day to help him with his behaviors. He opened up to me and let me help him. And I remember when he was able to transition back to the school that he wanted to go to, I asked him, I said, why'd you let me help you? Like, a lot of people have been trying to do this. And he said, I don't want to hurt your feelings. I'm like, we've been working together for about a year. You can say it. And he goes, well, you looked a little broken. I felt a little broken. I thought you'd get me. And I thought, wow, okay. Maybe this is something I could do for a living. And so at that point, I decided to go to Xavier and got my master's, and it was the best decision I've made because I really love what I get to do every day. Teens, you can do talk therapy with them. And you can also use some of the same techniques that you would use with younger kids, like modeling with them. And they're still figuring out who they are, so sometimes it can be easier to help them than in certain ways it can be to help adults, because you can see some of those changes happen a little bit more, in a way that's a little bit more pronounced. They're also funny. I think that humor is a really big part of being able to reach teens and being able to work with clients. And some of the things you hear teens say, I never really know what I'm gonna run into in a session, and I like that. Yeah, slang, music, times where, they'll say perhaps one version of events, and you can also kind of read between the lines and go, so this happened. Like, well, how'd you figure that out? It's like, well, I've been doing this a little bit, so. This one's a little humorous, and it taught me the power of modeling behavior. So I remember it was previous place that I worked, but I was working with an individual one-on-one, and I was serving individuals who didn't always have the greatest access to resources. So one of the things that I would do with a lot of my clients early on is I would take them for a meal. Because if I'm giving you food and I'm trying to be nice to you, hopefully you're gonna see me as somebody who can be helpful and not a threat. And I had the session, the individual was a little bit resistant because a lot of this therapy was court ordered at the time. But I expected it. I expected that, none of us are really necessarily that open to something that we feel like we're being forced to do. So I, remained professional, I remained open, I remained friendly, even though this person was, somewhat guarded in the moment and also, trying to distance themselves, and understandably so. So I went through it was fine. 3 months later, this individual was talking about an interaction that he had with somebody in his family that he had a difficult relationship with. And he goes, I just did what you taught me. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, remember how you taught me how I don't have to react to other people in the way that they're reacting to me? And I said, when did I do that? He goes, the first time I met you. I tried to get under your skin multiple times. You kept smiling and you bought me lunch. I was like, oh yeah. But I had taught him something and I didn't realize I had done it. And I think that when we're working with teens and we're working with younger people in general, they will pay a lot of attention to how we act, not necessarily what we say. So if we want to see emotional regulation in them, making sure we're regulated ourselves. And if we want to see skillful behavior in them, trying to be as skillful as we can be in the moment is, I think, incredibly effective, because we are teaching them even when we're not intending to. I think self-care is incredibly important, and I think it's okay to be intentional about it. My view earlier on in my career of self-care was, well, I want to make sure I get enough sleep. But to be quite honest, sleeping's something I'm going to do anyway. So I've tried to broaden my definition of self-care of what are activities that I can really engage in that will build me up and give me a sense of peace and feeling recharged. For me personally, that's being on a kayak in the middle of a body of water with headphones in. I love to kayak, it is my happy place, so I'll go ahead and go and do that, and it is something that really I think feeds me and helps me recharge. Yes, this is a cliche, but it's a true one. We can't give away what we don't have. If we want peace, if we want them to find peace or contentment, skillful behavior, a sense of serenity, if we're so depleted that we can't find that in ourselves, it's very, very hard to help someone find that. The most challenging place I've kayaked is other members of my family have a house about 45 minutes north of Boston. Ocean kayaking is definitely an experience that I almost would say is mindful, because you do have to pay attention to the present moment, because if you don't and a wave hits your kayak from the side, you can and will get flipped. So you better not daydream too much. You better pay attention to the present moment or you're going to end up getting wet.